Hello and welcome to another Brawny's Great Video Games playthrough. As always, I ought to really apologise for how late this video is, but that's what happens. I should also apologise for how I look. I am told I currently look like a new parent, which means untrimmed beard, bags under the eyes, and, well, baby stuff everywhere, as you can imagine, really. But today, I'm talking about a game that I have a huge amount of love for. A PC game from the early 90s that is infamous. It was created by Jake Kaufman and John Romero. No, not Doom. I am, of course, talking about Commander Keen, or, more specifically, Commander Keen in Invasion of the Vorticons. For those of you not in the know, Commander Keen was one of the first side-scrolling PC platformers ever created, and was originally released in 1990. It's a tough thing to imagine nowadays, as 2D side-scrollers are considered one of the most basic game styles ever made, but the PC did not have much in the way of side-scrollers, as getting scrolling to work on old-style PCs was an absolute nightmare. Then John Carmack invented adaptive tile refresh, which is a boring way of saying he made a thing that allowed smooth side-scrolling on the PC. And then to test this, they made Commander Keen. Well, sort of. Originally they made a Mario demo to show to Nintendo to try and persuade them that they could make a port of Mario 3 for the PC. But you can imagine how well that went. So instead we got Commander Keen. So what's Commander Keen like? Is it a Mario beta? No, of course it isn't. Let's not beat around the bush here. Objectively, this game is average at best. But why do I love it so much? When I was young, I didn't have a games console. We had a BBC Micro hooked up to a green screen monitor, and very occasionally, if we were good, Dad would bring up the colour TV and temporarily wire it into that. Which was good, because we had an edutainment game based around guessing what flag belongs to what country. And I don't know if you ever tried playing a flag identification game on a green screen monitor, but it is bloody impossible. Have you got any idea how many flags are the same apart from their colours? But anyway. It was the BBC Micro that gave me my love of platform games. I had some kind of cheap Donkey Kong rip-off, the name of which I can't remember. I had the terrible but amazing at the same time Doctor Who and the Mines of Terror, which I'm still on the hunt for a boxed copy of, and my most played platform game of all was Chucky Egg. But these were all single or flip screen platformers. There weren't any scrolling platformers. If I wanted to play those, I'd need to play on a console. And I didn't own a console, as I've said, so I'd have to go around to friends' houses. I distinctly remember my friend Russell in middle school, for example, had a Mega Drive. It was the first time I ever played a Sonic game, and I went round his house quite a lot after that. But then the BBC Micro got replaced with a PC, a 386 SX16, with a CGA monitor. And for those youngsters who don't know what CGA was, it was the first ever colour graphics adapter for a PC, which allowed it to display a whole 2 colours at once. And it was on that PC that I first discovered Commander Keen. And I freaking loved it. It was as if I was playing one of those consoles that I didn't own that I was so desperate for. It was a genuine scrolling platformer, and I enjoyed it so much that for years it was my go-to video game. So of course, when it turned up on Steam for 77p in the sale this year, I had to buy it and play it again. Is it as good as I remember? No, it's really not. But I knew that it wouldn't be, and do you know the thing that surprised me more? It's not anywhere near as bad as I worried that it would be. For a change, I'll cover the gameplay first, and oh wait, I haven't mentioned the plot. Well, it only exists if you bother to read it, and basically it consists of a small boy putting on his brother's American football helmet to become Commander Keen, and then taking his spaceship to Mars to explore. Yes, you heard that right, he's wearing a football helmet for space travel. Not a diver's helmet, not an astronaut's helmet, yes, a football helmet. You know, one of those ones with a big gap on the front. But this kid also had a spaceship lying around, so I'm unsure whether this kid is a genius or an idiot. Or some kind of combination of the two. A geniot, if you will. Back to the gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, the game engine was designed to create a Mario-style platformer, and it certainly belongs to that era of game. It's a reasonably slow game where you must find the exit to each level, as well as finding the 4 parts for your spaceship that were apparently stolen at some point when you landed on Mars. As Commander Keen, you have at your disposal a ray gun, which is useful for dispatching enemies, and a pogo stick, which is useful for jumping a tiny bit higher. Yeah, the pogo stick's my least favourite aspect of the game. I've always found it frustrating and hard to use. And don't get me wrong, I do sort of understand why, because otherwise it'd make the game way too easy because you could use it all the time, so it has to be a little bit hard to use. But the physics of it is slipperier than an oil-covered patch of ice. Not to mention the fact that sometimes you press the button to do a high jump and it just will not work. But you do need the pogo stick because the vast majority of levels have verticality in them. This is another change from the normal Mario-esque platformers that you saw at the time. Instead of just going from left to right, you have to explore vertically as well, as often the exit is at the top of the level and you start at the bottom. And with paths to explore that are dead ends or that lead you in circles, there is a bit more exploration involved than simply walking from one end of the level to the other, which helps to make it stand out in the sea of 90s 2D platformers. Moving on from the gameplay, I'm well aware this game has a pretty simple graphical style, and it could be considered ugly by modern standards. But this is where my nostalgia goggles kick in. I love the look of this game because I remember looking at this game for hours. At the time, this was a beautiful thing, or at least I thought this was a beautiful thing. And even now, looking at its limited colour palette and big chunky sprites, I have nothing but love and respect for this art style. From an audio point of view, however, this game is disappointing. There is absolutely no music and just the bare minimum of sound effects. This is one of those compromises that old games often had to make, particularly old PC games, as sound cards were not a standard part of PCs at that time. And I know that any younger viewers aren't going to understand that, but it's true. Sound on the PC used to be an optional extra, so it is best played with the sound turned off and some other music playing. I recommend Metallica, but then I usually do. But if you're the sort of person who has to have video game music playing along with your video game, in which case I recommend the Shovel Knight soundtrack, because it's just plain brilliant. So just turn the in-game sound down, and then just turn up whatever it is you want to listen to. It's impossible to get a balanced review of this from you, I hear the fussiest of you complaining. You clearly have a biased, nostalgic love for this game, and yes I do. But it's not without its flaws. The terrible sound is just one of the flaws. There is a real lack of variety from level to level. There are a huge number of ice levels early in the game, which do feature some god-awful ice physics. If you thought the pogo stick was bad before, try it in the ice levels. It's as if the oil-covered patch of ice you were previously controlling was mounted on a roller skate sliding down a hill covered in cling film. It's ridiculous. And these issues end up causing the game to commit the most cardinal of all video game sins. It gets boring. And yes, I know it was a simpler time, and I know we've been spoiled by the huge array of complicated and in-depth games that we all have today. But the lack of variety in the simple gameplay ended up making me happy to stop playing for a while. It's not hard, it's just kind of dull. So in conclusion, I am glad I own it. It does hold some really good memories for me. And I will probably try all the other episodes in the Commander Keen pack at some point. After all, I did buy them all for the grand total of 77p, so I shouldn't really let that go to waste. I might even complete it, but it's not going to be in one sitting. Because after a while, you remember all the other things you've got to do, the washing up, the laundry, tidying the house, and you realise you should probably get on with those instead. And when a game is reminding you to do housework due to the fact the game itself is dull, that's the sign it's never going to be considered a masterpiece. But it's fun nonetheless. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to watch some of my other videos. I've linked a couple here. Share this video if you enjoyed it. Please do subscribe, like, leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. You can find me on here. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. I'm really not very hard to find on the internet.